Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Mike from MOBOXgraphics.com, and we're back with another Microinteraction number 5. And in this video, we're going to do a notification icon. So if you're not familiar on YouTube, there's a little bell icon that when you tap it, you'll be notified of all future uploads. If you haven't done that already for this channel, you probably should. But if not, or if you have, then that's great to hear. So we're just going to be doing this kind of adorable little animation. And I just want to let you know that this video is brought to you by our sponsors over on Patreon, where we added new Discord rewards. So we have a Discord channel where you can come hang out, share your projects, and we could discuss there about all types of different things. So anyways, let's just go ahead and jump into After Effects here and figure out how we made this adorable little bell animation. So I already have my icons here already broken up. I've already designed these. I basically downloaded this here, which let me just increase the size so you can see it better. This is a bell icon I downloaded from the Google Material Design Icons pack that you could find online. I'll try to link it down in the description, but if you just search Google, you'll find it. They have a ton of free icons that you could download and use. However, they're in SVG format, which After Effects can't open. So first you need to open up into Illustrator and save it as an Illustrator file. And then you can come in here, right click, create shapes from vector layers. And you can see that now all of these pieces are broken up into their own path layers. So I went ahead and did that already, except for the circle, which I created a new circle and I deleted the other one because it was just a half circle and I wanted the full circle. And that's where this red comes in, which will act as our mask for that circle. So for starters, I'm just going to move the bell into the center of the composition. And I'm going to move the bell bottom just beneath it. I'm going to press T on the keyboard on the circle mask, which is what I'm calling this. And I'm going to move it right up onto the bell and I'm going to drag it down. And I'm basically going to use this as a mask for the bottom circle. So if I hold shift, it'll maintain that axis, the vertical axis. But if I just increase the opacity now on this bell, and I change this to alpha inverted matte, you can see that we get the same effect that we do on the other bell, except as this moves, it'll just be continuously masked, which is what I want. Next up, I'm just gonna move these two rings just on top of the bell, but I'm just gonna lock them so I don't accidentally grab them. I'm gonna animate them last. So, okay, let's see. Up next, what I need to do is I need to grab the mask and the bottom bell, and I'm gonna parent them to the actual bell. What that does is that if I open up the bell and hit R on the keyboard and I rotate this, it'll all rotate together, which is exactly what I want. So I'm gonna come here to maybe 1 second and set a rotation keyframe, as well as a rotation keyframe on the bell circle, which I'm gonna rename to bell bottom because that makes it a little bit easier. And I'm just gonna rename this to mask because I won't have any other masks. Okay, so now we're cooking with fire. So I'm just gonna move that to the bottom. I'm gonna probably rename this to bell frame, just to make it a little bit easier. And I'm gonna go to maybe 1 second, and I'm gonna have this thing rotate up, maybe -17 degrees. But the bottom bell, I want it to actually kind of maintain, ooh, I made a mistake already. Let's back that up. I need to actually move these anchor points. So the anchor points are not around the axis in which I'd actually want to rotate this. So I'm just gonna select this here. That is the pan behind tool, which lets you move the anchor point. So I'm just gonna move the anchor point to the upper piece of the bell. So that way they're kind of rotating about that axis. So if I rotate this, you'll see that it rotates like that as opposed to kind of around its center, which I didn't want. So I'm coming back here. If I do -17, which actually, wow, I stopped exactly at -17. That's pretty amazing. I might want this bell to actually appear like it's not rotating yet. So let's see, 10.2, and then have it move up to kind of hit that back wall. So that's just 1, 2, 1, 2. And then now I'm gonna go and make this 17. And I'm gonna just kind of taper these out here. So now I'm gonna make this to be 22. So basically I'm just flipping this. So if this is negative 22.2, which I'm just gonna round out to just 22 to make it easy, I'm gonna make this now positive 22. And on the bell frame, if that's positive 17, I'm gonna make that negative 17, just so it's kind of an even rotation. And then these are gonna be broken up into every 20 frames. So negative 17, negative 22, negative 17, or positive 17, positive 22. And then I want the bell to come down and just be 0. But I'm going to have this piece of the bell kind of bounce back and forth. So negative 15, then maybe 7, then 3. So I'm just basically just halving it every time in the opposite direction. So negative 3, and then 0. And so we'll just see what this kind of looks like. So it's obviously really janky and really bumpy, but now if we start adding some smoothing, it will hopefully look a lot better. So I'm just gonna select all of these layers, and I'm gonna use this motion tool, but I'll show you what the graphs look like. What this motion tool basically allows me to do is mess with the speed on the graphs. However, you can use this graph if you want. You could use the graph editor here and move the points, but basically if I select these points and I mess with this, it basically just changes the graph editor. So you don't need to have it, but I got this at mountmograph.com. It's like something like 30 bucks. Totally worth it. I'm not sponsored by them, but I use it all the time. So let's just see kind of what this looks like. So that's starting to get there. It's a little slow. So I'm just gonna select all these keyframes, hold Alt, and drag these in. So that'll proportionally reduce the time in between. So that looks pretty good. I think that this needs to maybe be drug out. So I'm just gonna select all these and hold Alt and drag this out. So it's a little bit slower. Drag these out. This isn't really a science. This is just kind of seeing what works. See if that works. That may not work. So I think that looks pretty good. I think in the beginning when you want this to start just a little bit slower. And now I'm going to bring this all in just a little bit more. Okay, and I think I'm just gonna actually stop this here at 0 and delete this last keyframe. I think it has a little bit too much bounce to it, which, you know, it all depends on how you want it to be. Maybe bring these in a little bit. Okay, and I actually think that even needs to be a little bit slower. Or a little bit faster, I mean. Okay, I'm just gonna hit Control Z a few times because I actually liked some of that additional resolution here towards the end. So let's see how that looks. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I think the ending is a little bit jagged. So I'm gonna now go into the graph editor and start messing with these. So now I'm thinking it's a little too fast. I'm just going to slow it down just a little bit by dragging that out, holding Alt again. I think that looks pretty good. But I keep bouncing in between having this end there or end after another rotation. Let's see. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so I like that. And now what I want is, as this is clicked, I'm gonna do something here with these rings now. So let's see, what should I do? A lot of different options here. I kind of like the idea of a vibrate. So remember in my last tutorial about the kind of the phone ringing, I added a wiggler with a slider control on it. So slider control, just gonna add some slider controls onto these. And in fact, if I want to make my life a little bit easier, I just hit Control Z, just got rid of those slider controls. I'm going to add a new null object and put it right in the center of where those are at, which is right there. And I'm going to parent these to that null. And I'm now going to add just the slider control to the null. And that way, when I type a wiggle expression for the position or rotation, hit R on the keyboard, hold Alt, and do wiggle 10, comma, the slider control. So what this does is 10 is the amount of, is the frequency between its wiggles, and this is how much it's gonna wiggle. So how many pixels it's gonna wiggle. So I'm gonna set a keyframe there for 0. Want this to increase to maybe 5. And then 0. Let's do a keyframe for 0 out here. So you can see what this looks like. Okay, so I think it's happening a little slow. Just gonna hit R on the keyboard and open this up. So let's see, maybe make this 20. And maybe instead of 5 here, in fact, I could even add another slider control. And instead of putting that 20 there, I could just delete that and pick whip it to that slider. And now I can control both at the same time. So let's see when it's clicked. I could bounce between keyframes by hitting J and K on the keyboard, by the way. Just gonna select slider controls. So that changes the amount. And this changes the frequency. So 45. And this is going to be set to 0. Maybe set this to 20. So I think that that's definitely moving way too many pixels. So let's change this to actually just like 5, see what that looks like. And then bring this down to 0 pixels. So probably don't even need that keyframe there because I think I like that amount. And I think I'm going to do the same for the position. So if I hit P on the keyboard, actually, I can just open this, copy this. And so now when I hit P on the keyboard, hit P on the keyboard, hold Alt, select the stopwatch, I could just paste that on there and it will basically have the same everything. So I think that is 5 is still too much. Maybe change that keyframe to 3. You know, I don't think I'm going to do it on the position. I think I'm just going to leave it onto the rotation. And I'm going to change this to maybe 2. Maybe change this to like 90. Let's see what that does. Kind of looks like it has like a little vibrate to it. Maybe I copy and paste that keyframe, so at least it have some good amount of vibrate. And then what I could even do is in here. I can open these up. And the contents, the ellipse, the stroke, and I can change the stroke width. I'm gonna hold Alt, select stroke width. I'm gonna do the same on the other ring, holding Alt for stroke width. And now I'm gonna just add another slider control to the null and pick whip these to the slider control. So that way I make sure they're both the same width, and I could also keyframe them at the same time. I could start naming these slider controls, but since there's only 3, I think that, I don't have really any problem. So I'm gonna set a slider control at 0, keyframe, hit U on the keyboard to see all my keyframes. And at this point, I'm gonna make them 36. I think that's where they were, maybe 35. Maybe I'll make them like 40, so they kind of, something like that. Move these over. So let's just kind of see what that looks like from far away. So I almost think that I like this starting more towards the end. Let's see what that looks like. I like that. And I'm just gonna move this in a bit. I don't really like how it's scaling up and then down a little bit. So I'm just gonna delete that keyframe and bring this over. Okay, so I like that. I think that all looks good. And now it's time to maybe add some coloration to this and do some other things. So let's see, when this is clicked, so we're gonna need probably a mouse cursor as well as a little notification. And so probably gonna go layer, new, adjustment layer, and add a brightness and contrast on this. Let's see if we can mess with the darkness on this. Okay, we can't. So a way to make all of this opacity happen at the same time is I could keyframe all this, but since my background's white and I'm not really doing anything too confusing and crazy, if I just create a new white solid here on top, and then I reduce the brightness, or reduce the opacity by pressing T on the keyboard and just lowering this down to, let's say, 75, is that the icon does kind of look just muted, and then I can control how dark or light I want it just with this keyframe. So if I open up all my keyframes again, U on the keyboard, so somebody clicks on it at this point. So I'm just gonna set a keyframe for 75, hit K on the keyboard, and I'm gonna increase this to 0. And add some smoothing using my tool. The graph should look something like that. Okay, I like that. After further inspection, I think I want these. And I'm just gonna add some smoothing onto these as well, which will look like that type of graph. Something pretty simple. Let's see, I could change the amount. So if I just increase that a little bit, I kind of get like more of like a gray color, which I like. And I'm gonna add a little notification button at the bottom. So rounded corners. And I'm just going to make kind of a little pill-shaped icon. And I'm just gonna center up the anchor point by pressing Y and dragging it to the center, and then using the align tool to center it up. So when I open up the rectangle on this little pill, I can increase the roundness, so that way it's perfectly round. And I could also decrease the transparency. So something like that probably looks good. And I'm just going to add some text saying notification on, but since the text is white and the background's white, I'm just going to change the color here. Change the font to Product Sans. Reduce the scale. Forgot an S here. Notifications on. Center up the anchor point. I'm going to start using my tool here, but you could just press Y and drag it to the center. Just move that right into the center. And I'm going to compare this to my reference image real quick. So I chose white text. So let's see, change this to white. But I want this to be on top of the shape layer. And I'm going to change the opacity on this. Just like that. So maybe at this point, we have this change opacity from 0 on like that. And I'll just add some smoothing again using the tool. Graph should look something like that. And I want this to maybe not be quite as dark. Something like that. I'm also going to parent this notifications on to that little pill icon, which I'm going to change to pill icon. And so that way I could scale this down by hitting S on the keyboard. And it scales everything down. Just like that. And I can even press U on the keyboard on this. And maybe I want this position to change as well. So if I hit a position keyframe, U on the keyboard, see all my keyframes, drag that keyframe over. Maybe I want this to start at the bottom and add the same smoothing to both the position and the opacity. Just like that. Add motion blur to everything. Make sure motion blur is turned on. And one thing is if I move the opacity over, you kind of get maybe a little bit softer of a transition. Just like that. And so I may even loop this, but basically with this type of knowledge, you could figure out how to loop it. It's no problem. It's pretty simple. Anyways, guys, I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a like. If you would like to download the project file, it's available on our Patreon account at the $3 level. And we appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching.